Thank you for coming today. My name is Alona Sorin-Polak. I'll be moderating the panel today with these very interesting guests. And we're going to talk about user retention versus user acquisition. So first of all, I'd like to welcome our guests from abroad who have traveled to be with us today. And we appreciate you making the effort to sharing your insights and experience with us. And let's start by each of you introducing yourself, your role at the company mainly, and what your company does.
Hi everyone, I'm Gadi Shoshani. I'm VP Marketing of Murka Games. We're a 500 people company creating mostly social casino apps and casual. And I'm VP Marketing, managing UA, creative, marketing analysts, and retention.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for having us all. My name is Marcia. I'm CEO of Revex. Revex is a performance DSP for user acquisition and retargeting. And we've been around for almost a decade, actually, born out of a media company, and who then put the DSP out as a standalone in 2014. And we are today part of the Alpha Group, which is a listed company for mobile advertising.
Hi, my name is Pan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Remerge. We are also a DSP, mainly focusing on Remerge, on retargeting, which is actually the synonym for us. And we've been around since 2014 also, and started already since then with retargeting when deep links were available. Now we are 175 people across the world with offices everywhere where there is an app.
Basically everywhere. Hi, I'm Emilien. I'm one of the co-founders of Addictive. I'm actually competing with those two guys, app retargeting DSP as well. We are something like 90 people right now, mainly in the US and in Europe. And my role is selling and marketing mainly.
Hello everyone, my name is Barak. I'm head of marketing at Beach Bum. We're a gaming company, focuses on evergreen card and board games. I've been working at Beach Bum for the past 7 years. You can say I was born and raised there, starting as a junior media buyer, and then now I'm leading two of our main titles, Domino Go and Backgammon on Lord of the Board.
Thank you. So as you may have noticed, we have EdTech surrounded by games. So I'm going to start with the first question is going to be to the games companies, Barak and Gadi. Gadi, let's start with you. So when it comes to user acquisition and even user retention and even retargeting, it's clearly a marketing department decision. But when it comes to retention, the lines are not as clear. So how does it work with you within the company? And then, Barak, I would like to ask you the same question afterwards.
Sure. So actually, funny story, it used to be part of the studio responsibility until not that long ago. We made a reshuffle, and basically in terms of the decision-making process, then it's definitely super collaborative. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, we jump on a call, we discuss the ideas for segments, what is working, what isn't. We analyze together, we just do like weekly meetings about it. And we take...
Specifically for that?
Yes, just for that. So we analyze, we compare, we brainstorm about various segments, ideas, why did it work, why didn't it work, and then we take the next decision. So this is kind of like a weekly thing and ongoing.
Great, thank you. And Barak?
Basically, I agree with Gadi, but at Beach Bum, it's even on a daily basis.
We're hoping for some more funny conflict stories. It's also good to hear that it works well.
Yeah, I think a part of, along with UA, main part of my job is actually this collaboration with the studio. I would say that it's going on a daily basis. Together, we're trying to understand how different changes in the product or the economy is actually impacting the user acquisition, and also the other way around, when we do changes in the traffic, how it actually changes the game KPIs, and that way we can move forward trying to acquire the best way possible.
So let's say around Christmas and New Year's when the CPI prices are skyrocketing, you invest more in retention?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, seasonality is, of course, a key factor in our decision when to invest in what. But we're always trying to do both, right? Retaining and attaining new users. So, yeah, that's the case.
All right, thank you. Marty, let's start with you. How do you measure and quantify user acquisition versus user retention? How do you make sure that you optimize data decision making?
Yeah, that's a good question, because what we see with our clients is that everybody defines, and I think it was in comments, everybody defines retention differently, and it also changes. Meaning maybe retention throughout the time frame X was important. Now suddenly it's a shorter time frame because there's more competition, changes in the game itself, for example. So we definitely need to look together with our clients. What are they looking at? So we analyze their KPIs, their product as well, before we do recommendations. So we really understand what means retention for them and how does it work in the game itself. Because every game is its own world, basically, you know? And that translates then for us into action, meaning how do we segment, how do we run the campaign, which supplier are we buying, and also which creative recommendations are we giving to them in order to make things happen.
With user acquisition, you have CPI, you have LTV, it's pretty straightforward. With retention, don't you have a few KPIs that you always rely on?
Yeah, so I'm actually closer to my two colleagues here in terms of what we offer. So our main business is in ad retargeting, and we branched out into user acquisition 3-4 years back because our retargeting clients ask us to do user acquisition for them. And the main difference is we're coming from a data science perspective where we say we know your audience now so well because of retention retargeting. Can we find these cohorts as well on the 1.5 to 2 billion unique users that we see every day? And so this is really a job that is driven out of retention that we try to extend into user acquisition. It's more about quality than quantity, and it seems to work.
All right. Gadi, with you, how does it work? How do you guys, on the game side, on the studio side, how do you define the KPIs on which you can make a data-driven decision? Is this a retention or a user acquisition?
Yeah, so right now with the whole IDFA deprecation and Google Sandbox privacy, right now the buzzword is incrementality, right? I don't know how many have heard it in the last day.
Here for the first time.
Yeah, probably. So basically what we do, we take segments, we split them up, we run comparison, and then we just see the uplift. And then we know which segments are working, we focus on those, etc. and rinse and repeat.
Can you give a specific example?
I mean, it doesn't so for example, we can split up according to last login, right? So it can be like 3 to 8 days, and then 9 to 12, etc. And then we also have the value of the users. So we run those segments with a split test, right? And then we just measure the uplift between the two groups, the treated and untreated groups.
Okay. Emilia, do you feel that the recent advancements in technology, mainly generative AI, has any impact on that, on the measuring, on the decision making?
Yeah, so generative AI, I like this word. This was the buzzword in Cannes Lions a few days ago as well.
Not a buzzword.
I don't know, you know, like I'm here, I'm in the market for almost a decade now, and I know I look younger, but yeah, the thing is that AI is in the center of what we are doing for years now, and so I don't know if generative AI has any impact right now. To be honest, it's the very beginning, so the applications are not really activable for us right now, but it's going to be, I hope. But thing is that with AI, we do something that is very important to me, so thank you for asking the question, which is churn prediction. What happens very often when it comes to retargeting is that publishers, they decide to have what we call the inactivity window, and after a certain number of days, they decide that their audience is not active anymore, and they request us to, like us, I mean retargeting partner, to go after those people. What we try to prove with churn prediction is that it's not a matter of days, it's a matter of user behavior, and that you need to predict those user behavior versus using a proxy such as inactivity windows.
Is it okay if I add anything on AI?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say same question. So yes.
Just like I mean, generative AI specifically, I think it's especially also for the gaming clients, for the copywriting of creatives. I think it's used already right now because you have a lot of open source databases, for example, where you can just like get all the captions. And obviously, if you are in several countries and you want to just have translations and to have that optimized on your creatives, and also beautiful things is on videos, right, where you have now all the voices all over the world with dialects and whatever, and you can just like let it run and generate videos scalable for all countries and test it out and A/B test, which obviously would have been very expensive to do so. And because those are all open source APIs, it's like for free. So everybody can start testing it right now, and which might be an interesting approach. Yeah.
It's a question for you. Does any of you see a reduction in user acquisition cost in materials, in creating materials, or in analyzing the data, or anything that derives from generative AI? Emily, I think you have.
We're actively working on that, especially for the creative, because I deeply believe that creatives are going to be skyrocketed by creative AI. But for now, let's be honest, it's the very beginning, so the team is working on it, but it's still very complex to use at scale.
Yeah, maybe just to quickly add, because there's a good example with localization, for example, and other things that can be done. I think on the other hand, and we have conversations also with clients and with vendors as well that try to offer us technology as well to implement this fast. There's a lot of question marks, and given that many are using ChatGPT, we also, I think, have realized now as practitioners what it can do and what it can't do. And in terms of the output as well, if I control the output, because there's a human reviewing the output, then I'm safe. But I think in terms of our advertisers wanting to have a clear and safe message out there, it's a bit earlier to automate that and not to know what is being shown. And what we have been doing in the past, for example, I think this also ties into customization as well as relevancy. In terms of the creative message, what we have been doing is transporting dynamic ads from e-commerce, from travel, etc., where this exists for a long time into gaming. And it depends very much how the product is being built from the gaming advertiser, whether the events that are required to drive the messaging is available, whether the landing points are available. But that's very much, let's say, an intermediary step. If you thought about AI, magic AI driving more performance, I think dynamic ads for gaming is an intermediate step that can help to drive more relevancy and performance as well, in a controlled way.
Definitely, and I also agree that it's the beginning. However, there are tools that are being used that are specifically designed for SEO, and there are tools for obviously art and materials, and there are tools for even planning the entire strategy and writing the content. However, I agree that it's not yet in a level that can be completely automated. It still needs a person reviewing it, but I do think that it can optimize time and obviously cost, both for user acquisition and retention. Barak, I'd love to hear what you think on the game side. Have you seen any cost reduction related to retention or user acquisition in that sense?
I think that, as my colleagues here said before, mainly in the part of the art and the creative side, we do use different generative AI tools, working with partners on reducing the costs of creating creatives, and localization is now also a big part of it. Other than that, we're also trying predictive AI tools, but I can't say that for now we're seeing a reduce in costs.
Okay. So we'll meet again. We'll reconvene in a few months and we'll see. So user acquisition and retargeting and retention and churn. Usually when people think about ed tech and ed agencies, they think user acquisition, but all of you are more on the retargeting and also very much dealing with the retention. So Pan, maybe you start about how do you focus on the retention side?
Yeah, I think even when we started now 9 years ago, the first pitch was obviously you spend so much money on getting those users, and then what, right? And I think like why retention and retargeting makes so much sense is because you're obviously like every game developer or every app developer has like those valuable data, yeah, which is like this treasure, and which is then like relatively easy to leverage to just like get whatever strategic goal you want to have, right? You have this understanding, and you can buy relatively cheaply on top of that, and then you can just like, yeah, whatever you want to do in the funnel at what point of time, just like achieve it in that way. And we talked already about it, like it's exactly, okay, what type of segments you use, when do you touch the users, in what way, and see like, okay, what do you want to achieve? I mean, practically most of the time you can just like make money with retargeting because it's like so deep in the funnel, yeah, so you can measure and fine-tune it really, relatively well, yeah, and then you have to just like understand, okay, what do you do with your highly churned users who haven't opened the app 180 days, what with the ones who are actually active but you need to get them right now towards a purchase or something like that. So yeah, it's the strategy goes really like fine tuning, whereas UA is kind of, it's clear. Yeah, you always get to that action item and then try to see like what happens next with those users. But yeah, then it's getting more fine granular. So that's why you have like also more like a larger educational team around it, because it's like differences in countries, regions, segments, game topic or whatever, where things might work and others might not work.
Thank you. Emilia, I'd like you to continue this, talking about churn. There's like Panja said, there's sort of a sweet spot before you lose the user and how you get them. So if you can give an example of how you do it.
Before we go on churn, I would like to emphasize that Pan mentioned it. It's expertise that is very important, maybe way more important than for UA. And this is something we highlight a lot for our clients. Like we know we run campaigns already for your type of apps or games, etc. And we know which strategies are working and which are not, which is something very, very important when it comes to retargeting. And the second thing is that it's impossible or almost impossible to compare UA results with retargeting results, and I'm trying a lot for years because most of the time UA budget are, I don't know, like maybe 5 to 10 times bigger than retargeting budget, which is not very good for the business. So I tried for years to compare UA and retargeting performances. The only way you can compare it is with one strategy, and you mentioned it, for the long-lapsed users. It's very often more cost-effective to retarget them versus trying to reacquire them with a UA partner. But I think that's the only case where you can really compare it. And for churn prediction, again, I think it's very important to activate it. So what we developed, because again, most of the case when you go to a retargeting partner, you're like, okay, I have my users, they are not active anymore. Could you make them come back? That's great, but I want to make people understand that it's cheaper to retain their users versus trying to reacquire them when they're not active for a long time.
Can you give an example of when you've done it very successfully?
Sure. For instance, when we put that in place, we just figured out that on our retargeting campaign for a big publisher, we were missing something like 20% of the audience. That was just, we were 90% sure they're gonna be lapsed in the next 3 days, but the inactivity window was 7 days, which means that you're wasting your time not going after them after 3 days. So that was an example, and then they reduced the inactivity window and they gain in ROAS, for instance.
Can you share numbers or?
No.
No names, but numbers?
No, I cannot share
I had to
numbers,
try.
I'm sorry.
Gadi, same question. How do you define the sweet spot also between the losing and regaining the customer, the user?
So it's a great question, but the answer I think is complex, because I'm sure that if we compare, for example, we're discussing companies and you asked about can you give specific numbers. However, monetization for each product is completely different. So even within Morka, we have a couple of social casino apps, and the monetization behavior is completely different. So you can be more aggressive, you can be less aggressive, but as long as it fits the company's KPI window, it works, right? So I don't think there is like a specific number sweet spot, as long as it works for the company in terms of their KPIs.
So I'll take the next question to you, Martia. Following on what Gadi just said, at the beginning you talked about working with each customer. So is there a one-size-fits-all solution? I'm guessing you're going to say no. This is why I'm asking you this.
It's predictive AI now.
Yeah, exactly. So on the customization side, personalization side, how far do you go, and how much do you have like an average that you try to stick to, and how far do you go with the personalization?
Okay, so on the retention side, obviously, like I think we've talked about, it's very hard to predict where retention should start, and I think a seamless process, which also has been pointed out, how can we predict that somebody is going to really churn? I think it's very hard to predict. Is it even predictable, right? Because I think we are humans, we are following also certain impulses now, and in the marketing, in a world full of marketing advertising, we easily get distracted. So we're playing a game today, and then we are getting enthusiastic about another one. I think it's a very natural process. So I think what needs to be intact is an understanding that this is imperfect, and what do I want to do about it, and how much do I want to invest? So what's my own P&L on the game? How much can I pay in order to drive retention, for example, as early as possible? Or is it easy for me to get users back? And I think this is, given that we have a lot of game developers here, I mean, every game has its own mechanics and life cycle, and sometimes you can't get users back. It's kind of finished, sort of. The movie finished and moving on to a new movie, and other games you can get users easily back. So based on really what the product is, and this is what we try to understand as an ad tech firm, you can propose different solutions, and none of these solutions is going to be perfect. Again, it's a matter of the ROI, the P&L of the game itself, and that's where we try to align. No? At the end of the day, we're transporting messages, we're doing media buying, we're transporting the messages, which is why I mentioned previously, the better the message, the better also the impact and the performance, and we try to make this as custom and relevant as possible.
All right, thank you. So we're nearing the end, and I have two questions that I'd like each of you to answer briefly, and then we'll move on to questions from the audience. Looking ahead, what trends or changes you're seeing? We briefly mentioned generative AI. This is kind of the obvious one, so feel free to say something else. And also, how are you preparing for them?
So I think the main change that is up and coming was probably some changes on Apple's side and Google's side in terms of the whole IDFA deprecation and the Google Privacy Sandbox. So we know that those things are being worked on, right? And this is definitely something that's going to change. While in parallel, we as gaming companies need to be always one step ahead and think, okay, what's going to change next, and how do we adapt to that?
Just go one by one, same question. Next, future trends and changes, and how you prepare for them.
That was very complete, I would say. Yeah, preparing for the uncertain, and I think that keeps us all on our toes as well to offer solutions to our clients that are the advertisers, and just try to be a step ahead, embrace new technology and new requirements, and be there for our clients. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say, like, I think that's the biggest uncertainty for everyone, right? Because we saw what iOS, what happened at iOS on retargeting. Right now, like, it's kind of the revenues where you don't have an ID goes to zero. It's not possible. But like, I just like talked to Apple 2 weeks ago, and they're like with the scan team and the ATT team, and like they are changing now. I think their mindset in that sense that they have done like some iterations where it was just like everybody complained like in the industry saying like, okay, what is this? Yeah, I cannot work with that. And I think they got like pushback now somehow internally saying like, okay, you get development resources, now you have to do something which creates impact, where everybody gets like now it's usable, now I can monetize. So, which specifically now is also retargeting on iOS, where on Scan 5 they announced already with a retention measurement, right? Which is the one side of things. Now it comes around the retargeting part. And there they're looking very closely what Google is doing, yeah, with the new protected audience API, which we are obviously very close working with them together to make that work. And so yeah, it's like crazy because like we have no clue how it will look like, but yeah, we all need to work together, and then yeah, the app developers, the game developers come there, and hopefully it all works out profitable, right?
So yeah, so privacy, for sure, as a retargeting partner.
Always a good answer. Privacy is always going to be.
Yeah. But ATT hit us a lot. I think all of us in that room. So the way they did things, so I would rather they just like think twice before hitting us. But no, this is the way it is, and maybe they will adapt. Google is doing things differently, with let's say more. So like a smoother approach, and working with vendors as well, like us, which is pretty good. We'll see how it evolves. But yeah, for sure, like for the 3 next years, privacy will be the main topic for us, I assume. And then we'll see with the rest, because like after 10 years in the market, like you have new trends. Every year we had blockchain a few months ago, and then we all know how it ends. So yeah, so we'll see.
I don't know how it ends yet, but...
You want me to say privacy? No. So I'll take something else. Basically, we talked about personalization, and we all know that currently we break down the user base to segments and localize whatever we can, but I think really in the near future that it's going to be more dramatic, like every single player will have his own experience within the game, like different visuals, different monetization. So that's where I see it goes.
All right, so final question, and then we're moving to questions from the audience. Just again, answer one by one quickly. If you could improve one thing in the games industry when it comes to retention or user acquisition, what would the thing be?
So I think the main thing is right now for the gaming companies to focus on is experimentation. So I like asking other companies, how are you guys working? What are you targeting? But it's not like I expect to copy what they're doing and for it to work with what we're doing. It's more about just getting new ideas and continue to test things. So don't be set on a specific approach. Always have, I wouldn't call it the plan B, but something in testing so you can, we're talking about changes. It's super dynamic, right? So you always have to have like a test running.
Thanks. So when we talk about app retargeting, which drives then retention, I think in the gaming vertical, adoption and knowledge about app retargeting is still surprisingly low in comparison to other app verticals. And I think, of course, first comes the product, comes the game, etc., and the experience. But then, given that retention is so important, or more important now that user acquisition is much more difficult and more expensive, I think education is very important to really work together with your clients and to really show what you can do with app retargeting and how it can drive retention and still align to everybody's P&L.
I can just like add also to not forget iOS. Yeah, a lot of companies are just because they thought, okay, it's over, it's gone. Now, if you compare like pre-ATT, early 20, or even 2020 or so, to now, like you can still scale 5 times more. Yeah, because you have super valuable user, or even the ones who have opted in. It's just like much more users because you had that boom during COVID, and everybody is like now using apps. So you might see it there, and it's like still like a lot of things doable on iOS. So yeah, just let it run.
Surprisingly, I won't say something around retention, not directly for gaming. So if I were running gaming apps, I assume I will do way more cross promotion and try to lower as much as possible my CPIs. And surprisingly, today I don't know that many publishers really leveraging cross promotion the right way, which is something I really still don't understand, but maybe for technical reasons. But yeah, this is definitely something I will invest a lot more.
I think that instead of looking at the traditional KPIs, day 2, day 7 retention, focus first on long-term retention and also on breaking down to segments and focus on the most valuable segments. For example, retaining paying users, which is more important than just retention. That's what I would do.
All right. Thank you, guys. It was very interesting for me. I hope for everybody else. If you have any questions, this is the time. We have a few minutes.
It was very Not interesting, that talk. No one
I think
asked
it was
question.
uninteresting for me. I don't know. Or maybe you were so
I told
insightful.
you.
You were so
They fall
informative, they had
asleep.
nothing to ask.
You need to retarget
They
them.
know everything now.
That's your job.
I'll pick up someone.
All right, so thanks everybody for coming. And thank you guys.